At dinner with friends, my wife lied about plans. Later, I found her car at her ex's house and heard her say, "It was just one night. It didn't mean anything," to her parents. I got in my car and drove 400 miles without stopping. That moment broke something fundamental in me. As I sat in that truck stop at 3 a.m., staring at my phone buzzing with increasingly desperate messages from Vicky, I realized I'd been living someone else's life for the past year. My dad's words echoed in my head. A man should never follow a woman. He'd been right about everything, and I'd ignored every warning sign. Let me back up and explain how I got to that point, because the foundation of this disaster was laid months before that devastating night. I met Vicky during our junior year at State University. We were both studying in the library when she asked to borrow my economics textbook. She was gorgeous, smart, and seemed genuinely interested in my thoughts on market theory. Within weeks, we were inseparable. What I didn't fully appreciate then was that I was her rebound relationship from a 5-year commitment with her ex-boyfriend, Ron. Here's what I should have recognized as red flags. Vicky had been with Ron from age 17 to 22. They'd been planning marriage when she discovered he was cheating with a coworker who got pregnant. Ron immediately dumped Vicky and married his pregnant mistress. When Vicky told me this story, she painted Ron as a villain, but I could see the pain in her eyes whenever his name came up. She wasn't over him, not even close. My parents saw through the whole situation immediately. My father, a successful regional sales manager who'd built his career on reading people and situations, sat me down after meeting Vicky for the first time. "Son, that girl is still in love with someone else. You're a placeholder while she figures out her life." My mother, equally perceptive, added, "She's going to take you as far away from us as possible, mark my words." They were both absolutely correct, but I was 21 and convinced I knew better. After graduation, I had multiple job offers. The highest paying was a management trainee position with a retail corporation in our metro area, starting at $52,000 annually, with clear advancement potential. My dad had connections in the industry and assured me I could be earning 6 figures within 5 years if I stayed focused on my career development. Instead, I took a job 230 miles away in Vicky's hometown, managing a smaller store for $38,000 annually. The career prospects were limited, but Vicky had already secured a teaching position in her local school district. When I told my parents about my decision, my father looked genuinely disappointed. "You're making a fundamental mistake, Anthony. A man builds his career first, then finds a woman who supports those goals. You're doing it backwards, and it never ends well." But I was convinced our love would conquer any practical concerns. We got married in Vicky's family church with 180 guests, 40 of whom were my family and friends. Her parents paid for everything, including a honeymoon in the Bahamas that cost more than my monthly salary. The early months of marriage felt good on the surface. We rented a newly built apartment less than half a mile from Vicky's school, while I commuted 16 miles to my store. I was working 60-hour weeks, trying to prove myself worthy of advancement, while Vicky settled back into her hometown social circle. Here's where my strategic thinking should have kicked in, but I was too infatuated to see the patterns developing. My entire social life revolved around Vicky's friends and family. I had no independent relationships, no separate interests, no personal identity apart from being Vicky's husband. In business terms, I had no diversification, no backup systems, no alternative support structures. Vicky's monthly girls' nights should have been another warning sign. Every month she'd meet with her 3 closest friends for dinner, supposedly to catch up and talk. These weren't typical girls' nights with drinking and partying, just dinner and conversation. She was always home by 8 p.m., completely reliable and consistent. Until that Wednesday night in May. At 9 months of marriage, we'd started trying for a baby. Vicky went off birth control, and we were both excited about the possibility of starting our family. In retrospect, I realized this was likely when her anxiety about permanently committing to me kicked into high gear. Starting a family would make leaving much more complicated. The day everything collapsed started normally. It was a Wednesday, and Vicky had her monthly dinner planned with her friends at Antonio's, the Italian restaurant where I always ordered takeout on her girls' nights. I stopped by after work to chat briefly with the group and pick up my usual lasagna and homemade bread. The 4 women seemed normal, laughing and talking over their salads. Vicky kissed me goodbye and said she'd be home around 9. "Love you," she called as I left with my takeout bag. At home, I devoured the excellent food and settled onto the couch to watch TV. Working 60-hour weeks had me constantly exhausted, and I dozed off almost immediately. What happened next still gives me chills. I had the most vivid nightmare I'd ever experienced. Vicky and I were driving through mountains on a winding road when she suddenly asked me to stop the car. She got out, walked to the edge of a cliff, turned back with a strange smile, and said, "Goodbye, Anthony." When I tried to move, I felt trapped by invisible restraints. She disappeared over the edge, and I woke up screaming her name. The clock showed. Vicky still wasn't home, which was completely unlike her. She was never late, never out of communication. I called her phone and got voicemail immediately. 15 minutes later, same result. My texts went unanswered. That's when my years of business problem-solving training finally kicked in. When facing an unexpected situation, gather information systematically. I called Lori, Vicky's best friend, and the organizer of their monthly dinners. "Anthony, hi, what's up?" Lori sounded confused when I explained I was looking for Vicky. "What do you mean? We all left the restaurant around 7:30. My heart stopped. "She told me you were going to someone's house afterward to continue talking." The silence stretched for several seconds. "Anthony, that didn't happen. Everyone went straight home. Let me try calling her." Lori put me on hold while she attempted to reach Vicky, then came back with the same result, up straight to voicemail. She promised to call the other women from dinner to see if anyone knew anything. Next, I called Vicky's parents. Her mother immediately panicked when I explained the situation, and her father, Tom, took the phone. Tom was a practical man, a retired electrician who'd always treated me fairly. "Something's not right, son. Vicky doesn't lie, and she doesn't turn off her phone. We're going to drive around and look for her car. You do the same." For 30 minutes, I drove through every parking lot and side street in town, my anxiety building with each empty space. This wasn't a large community. There were only so many places she could be. Then I spotted her silver Honda on Oak Street, a residential area I rarely visited. I parked behind her car and immediately called Tom and Lori. They arrived within minutes. Lori took one look at the house where Vicky's car was parked, and her face went pale. "Anthony," she said quietly, grabbing my arm as Tom and his wife marched toward the front door. "That's Ron's house, Vicky's ex-boyfriend. He lives there with his wife and daughter." The implications hit me like a physical blow. Everything clicked into place. The mysterious extended girls' night, the turned-off phone, the carefully maintained lie. My wife was cheating on me with the man who'd broken her heart 5 years earlier. Tom was already pounding on the front door, shouting for someone to answer. His wife stood behind him, equally angry. A neighbor came out from across the street, drawn by the commotion. The porch light came on, and a man opened the door. Tom immediately tried to push past him into the house, while Vicky's mother screamed accusations. Then I saw her. Vicky emerged from behind Ron, looking disheveled and panicked. Her parents shouted at her, asking how she could do such a thing. That's when I heard Vicky say, "It was just one night. It didn't mean anything," to her parents, trying to minimize what she'd done. When she spotted me standing 20 yards away, she called out, "Anthony!" and started running toward me. But I was done. Every emotion hit me at once: betrayal, humiliation, rage, and underneath it all, a strange sense of relief that my instincts about this whole situation had been correct. I sprinted to my car and drove away as fast as possible. My adrenaline was so intense I could barely think straight. I drove aimlessly through town, my phone buzzing constantly with calls I refused to answer. Eventually, I found myself at the interstate entrance. I'd planned to make a U-turn and go home to face the situation, but instead, I made a split-second decision that probably saved my sanity. I got on the highway heading west and didn't stop driving until I'd covered 400 miles. By 3 a.m., I was exhausted and running on pure shock. I pulled into a truck stop and slept in my car until voices woke me around dawn. The reality of what had happened crashed over me as I bought coffee and checked my phone. 17 missed calls, 23 text messages, multiple voicemails, all from Vicky, progressively more desperate and apologetic. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. Please come home so we can talk. I love you, not him. But here's what shifted everything for me. Instead of rushing back to try salvaging the relationship, My business training kicked in. I analyzed the situation like a strategic problem instead of an emotional crisis. First, I called my boss and explained I needed several days off due to a family emergency. He immediately granted me all the paid time off I needed and told me to keep him posted. Then I called my parents. My father's response was exactly what I expected. "We tried to warn you, son, but you wouldn't listen. Now you need to divorce her immediately and get on with your life." Instead of rushing home to confront Vicky, I spent 2 days in that city, thinking through my options systematically. By the end of the second day, I'd made 3 strategic decisions that would define the rest of my life. First, I wanted a complete divorce as quickly as possible. Second, I never wanted to see or speak to Vicky again if I could avoid it. Third, I was never setting foot in that town again. But before I could implement those decisions, I needed to address my career situation. I called my boss and explained that I wanted to relocate immediately, as far from my current town as possible. If that wasn't possible, I'd submit my resignation. My boss, who'd always been impressed with my work ethic and results, had an immediate solution. "Anthony, we just terminated the manager of our urban store about 3 hours from where you are now. It's a challenging location in a rough neighborhood, but if you can turn that place around, it'll fast-track your career advancement. The pay is $48,000 starting, with performance bonuses that could push you over $60,000 in the first year." Without hesitation, I accepted the position. The next day, I drove to check out the location. He wasn't joking about it being rough. The crime statistics were genuinely concerning, but the store had potential, and the employees, while undertrained, seemed genuinely motivated to improve. More importantly, it was 400 miles from Vicky and everything connected to that failed chapter of my life. While I was making practical arrangements, I also hired an attorney back in Vicky's county. I found a well-reviewed divorce lawyer, paid the $1,500 retainer by credit card, and gave him explicit instructions. I wanted no direct contact with my wife. All communication would go through him. My attorney called Vicky to inform her of my intentions and called me back with her response. "She's hysterical," he reported. "Says she doesn't want a divorce and just wants to talk to you. I advised her to get legal counsel and told her all future communication goes through me. She screamed no and hung up. Perfect. That confirmed I was handling this correctly. Next, I called Tom, Vicky's father, to explain my decision. This was the hardest conversation because Tom had always treated me like a son. "I'm disappointed and sad," he said in a broken voice, after I explained that I'd relocated 400 miles away and filed for divorce. "Not disappointed in you, Anthony. Disappointed and ashamed of my daughter. My wife and I would selfishly like you to stay married to Vicky, but you're doing the right thing. She destroyed something precious, and there's no coming back from that." Tom assured me they'd handle Vicky's living situation and the apartment lease. "It's the least she can do after what she's put you through," he said. When I thanked him for treating me fairly, I broke down for the first time since that night. This man had become more of a father figure to me than my own dad in some ways, and I was losing him too because of Vicky's choices. For the next 6 months, I threw myself into turning around that troubled store. The neighborhood was genuinely dangerous, but the challenge gave me purpose and distraction. I implemented new training systems, improved inventory management, and built relationships with community leaders to address some of the safety concerns. Meanwhile, Vicky continued her desperate attempts to contact me. Voicemails, texts, handwritten letters sent through my attorney. I never responded to any of them. My lawyer advised that the state's at-fault divorce laws worked in my favor, since Vicky had admitted to adultery, but she was fighting the divorce anyway, hoping to force counseling and reconciliation. When the hearing date arrived 6 months later, I had to return to face her in court. I'd hoped to avoid appearing in person, but my attorney explained it was necessary since Vicky wasn't agreeing to our terms. Walking into that courthouse was surreal. I'd built a completely new life 400 miles away, proven myself professionally, and moved forward emotionally. Vicky looked devastated when she saw me, waving with tears in her eyes. I just nodded politely. During the hearing, her attorney requested mandatory counseling, claiming his client was willing to do anything to save the marriage. But the judge was unimpressed. It's obvious that Anthony isn't interested in reconciliation, having moved out of state and established a new life. Since the state has at-fault divorce laws and adultery has been admitted, I'm granting the divorce as requested. After the hearing, Vicky approached me crying, asking for a hug. Despite everything, I gave her that. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I made a terrible mistake. I wish you and your parents nothing but the best," I told her, and I meant it. Then I hugged Tom and his wife goodbye and left that town forever. 6 years later, my strategic approach to handling the crisis has paid off completely. The challenging store I took over became the highest performing location in our district within 2 years, earning me a promotion to regional manager overseeing 12 locations. My salary has grown to $87,000 annually, and I'm on track to reach 6 figures within the next year, exactly as my father predicted if I'd focused on career development. I've been in a committed relationship with an amazing woman named Jessica for 2 years now. She's a nurse practitioner who owns her own home and has never been married. We plan to move in together when we start having children, but neither of us feels pressured to formalize things with a wedding. We've built something based on mutual respect and shared goals rather than romantic desperation. As for Vicky, the updates I get through Lori paint a picture of someone who never recovered from the consequences of her choices. She's currently living with a divorced man in his early 50s who has several adult children. Apparently, this man used to be her family's neighbor when she was growing up, and Vicky was friends with his oldest daughter during childhood. Her parents are mortified by the relationship, creating further strain in her family connections. Even more pathetically, Ron and his wife are still together, but according to Lori, they both cheat on each other regularly. During one of their separations, his wife had a baby with another man, though they've since reconciled and had another child together. The whole situation is exactly the kind of dysfunctional mess I escaped by refusing to participate in Vicky's drama. Looking back, every decision I made after finding her at Ron's house was strategically sound. Refusing to engage emotionally, maintaining no contact, relocating immediately, focusing on career advancement, and never looking back created the foundation for genuine long-term success. The most satisfying part isn't even my professional advancement or healthy relationship. It's knowing that I handled the crisis with the kind of strategic thinking that builds character and demonstrates genuine strength. While Vicky spent 6 years cycling through dysfunction and drama, I built something meaningful and lasting. My father was right about everything. Rushing into marriage, following a woman instead of building my career first, and especially his prediction that someone still emotionally attached to an ex wasn't relationship material. The painful lesson cost me a year of my life and thousands of dollars, but it taught me to trust analytical thinking over emotional impulses. That night when I heard Vicky tell her parents, "It was just one night, it didn't mean anything," she revealed everything I needed to know about her character and priorities. A person who could systematically lie to their spouse's face, turn off their phone to avoid detection, and then minimize the betrayal as meaningless wasn't someone worth fighting for. The 400-mile drive away from that situation was the smartest decision I ever made.